And we are live.
Good evening and welcome to this month's Speak to Council session. As a reminder, all speakers have 3 minutes to share their comments. For those of you who are participating via Zoom, we ask that you address council with the same respect that you would expect and to avoid the use of profanities. A staff member will notify speakers when they have 30 seconds left, and speakers will be removed from the Zoom call once their time has expired. Staff members will read the first 3 minutes of all written comments. I'd like to remind participants that, and those watching online, that my colleagues and I are here to listen to your comments that are presented tonight. And as such, it's standard that we do not respond during this session. Your contact information has been shared with council, and I encourage my colleagues to follow up with any comments or concerns that pique your interest. And I will, of course, acknowledge your participation in a communication thereafter as well. With that, we will begin our Speak to Council session.
There are no speakers on the A list, so we'll start with Elizabeth McGriff. She'll be joining us by Zoom.
She did not join the waiting room yet, so we could circle back to her at the end of the list.
Thank you. Matt Droin. He'll be joining us by Zoom.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, members of City Council, thank you for taking the time to listen to my concerns as a housing provider and city resident. I have been buying and developing housing in the city of Rochester for almost 15 years. And due to the Housing Stability and Tenant Protection Act of 2019 and the seemingly endless eviction moratorium, I'm starting to see fellow housing providers who create naturally occurring affordable housing for our low-income city residents begin to break under the pressure of our current environment. Many of them, including myself, have tenants who have not paid rent for almost a year. Fortunately, most of my properties are in higher income areas and those that have been relatively unaffected by the current pandemic. However, those whose businesses have been to provide naturally occurring affordable housing cannot pay their mortgage, cannot pay their property taxes, cannot pay their to repair their properties, cannot pay their insurance, and cannot pay their utilities. And there has really been no relief for them. Many of them are being forced to sell or worse. Most of these properties are being bought by the people that we do not want to have control over our housing stock. Out of town, absentee landlords, also known as extractors, not only who extract from their properties, but extract wealth from our community. When we have locally owned property landlords, we keep wealth within our community. It doesn't go outside of it. A housing crisis is real. According to the National Low-Income Housing Coalition, the Greater Rochester area has a shortage of over 30,000 affordable housing units. This means that over 30,000 of our residents are either rent burdened, living in overcrowded housing, or have no housing at all. I think that our call to action for City Council and city government is to figure out how we can get relief directly to landlords so that they can make their ends meet or end up losing those housing units. Also, we need to be seen as partners in the community to figure out how we can create more naturally occurring affordable housing in our community and partner with those who are responsible landlords and keep them in business. So that being said, in terms of affordable housing units in 2019, there was a total of 187 units that were created through the partnership of nonprofits, government organizations, and low-income housing developers. That's 187 versus 30,000, the 30,000 units that we need locally. So please, I insist that you reach out to us and figure out how to get us relief. Thank you.
Giovanna Leslie.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, I am writing to ask for good cause eviction protections for the residents of Rochester so they are protected from wrongful evictions. Good cause eviction protection would automatically give tenants the right to renew their lease and protect them against predatory rent hikes. Tenants could still be evicted with a good cause like non-payment, violating the lease, or if the owner wants to occupy. Good cause eviction would bring stability to the Rochester community. 1 out of 4 Rochester residents move each year, and 1,200 tenants a year face holdover eviction. Often this is due to lack of right to lease renewal and the fact that landlords can terminate their lease at any time. Evictions have generational impacts on children, disrupting health, education, and job stability. Rochester City Council must pass good cause eviction protections in order to stabilize the Rochester community. Thank you, Devonna Leslie.
Leah Nelson.
My name is Leah Nelson, and I am calling on you to pass good cause eviction protections for the Rochester community. These protections allow tenants to renew their lease and prohibit landlords from making predatory rent hikes. Tenants would still be able to be evicted with good cause, like not paying rent or violating the lease. Currently, landlords can terminate a tenant's lease at any time, which is very destabilizing to the community, creates generational impacts on children, and disrupts health, education, and economic stability. Each year, a quarter of Rochester residents move housing, and the city sees 1,200 holdover evictions. City Council passing the good cause eviction protections is vital to provide Rochester residents with housing stability that they deserve. Thank you.
Allie Dentinger by Zoom.
Hi, Council. Thank you for taking the time to listen tonight. I want to take a minute and just thank everybody who wrote the letter to the state last month in support of an eviction moratorium. Take your hand real quick if you were a part of that. Just give yourselves a little pat on the back because I'm really thankful for you folks, because whether you realize it or not, Rochester is one of the main reasons we have an eviction moratorium. And I'm really proud to be a part of that. And I'm proud that you guys were a part of that as well. But I also want to real quick talk about some of the folks who were falling through the cracks ahead of this being passed. And I don't know if you realize, I'm going to hit you with more data because that's, I think, what you've come to expect from me. There were 47 cases that were holdover evictions that ended with warrants being signed back from October 1st when the moratorium was lifted. So those cases, no one is alleging non-payment, though in some cases, maybe the landlord chose not to reason for that. But 47 of them had warrants signed against them. And what I also want to hit you with is that 16 of those properties don't have C of Os. That's kind of scary because should those folks even be eligible for eviction is, I think, a really critical question that we have to ask ourselves. I also ran some numbers today because I just love math. There is a combined of those 47 properties, 231 code violation. This is your data. This is coming straight from the city's website from code enforcement. We're looking at C of Os that expired in 2014. And you might be going, my God, how do we have this? Which I have that question as well. But why aren't these tenants complaining? And I think the answer is really simple, is that retaliatory evictions are just all too common in our city. We don't have good cause eviction protection, so that landlord doesn't need to worry about those tenants because all they need to do is not renew the lease and the tenant will just move on, or the tenant won't move on. They'll be taken to court. They'll be in violation of the agreement that was originally set because they were probably on a month-to-month lease at that point, and c'est la vie to the tenant. I think one of the things I want to just bring up, I think a lot of the folks that speak out against good cause eviction protections really fall into one of two categories. And I'm hoping you guys are potentially in number one. You haven't actually read the legislation. Okay, can I just say it? If you haven't read it, you might not actually understand it. The list of reasons that someone can evict are
30 seconds.
are really there, really valid. Potentially, folks who don't support this are worried about their tenants speaking up, are worried that they're not going to be able to do predatory rent hikes, and are worrying about being held to standards of quality housing. So I please ask you, please introduce good cause eviction protections and pass it. I also want to shout out to Katie for attempting to track down some voicemails. I think there were supposed to be a lot more messages that came in tonight, but some of the voicemails that people left last night for you all were not able, I think, to make it. So thank you, Katie, and hopefully they'll make it through. But a lot more people had a lot more thoughts tonight that I think are going to get to share.
Is Elizabeth McGriff, is she on?
She is not, and I can reach out to her to pass her message along.
Okay. That was the last speaker.
Okay. Well, thank you all for participating and joining us. We then will recess until 7:30 when we come back to conduct our full council meeting for the month of January.
Thanks, Kate.